holiness, at times even unaware of it themselves. The church gathers such flowers from the hedges and gives glory to God. Today we hear about another flower from the hedge.
Carol Ann. Often here in the church, we say how we are to convert the poor, to evangelize the poor. What I have learned is that the poor also evangelize the church. Carol Ann was one of those people who opened my heart to Christ in a way that has deeply marked my life. She suffered from severe mental illness. In one of her more lucid moments, she shared with me the story of her first personal encounter with God as a young girl on a boat near Vancouver. In a real way, the hand of God did rest on Carol Ann. One of those deep exchanges took place one day when I was hiding in the chapel, burdened by many doubts and sorrows. Carol Ann walked into the chapel, went straight to the icon of Christ, and began to pray out loud in the empty chapel. She eventually also prayed for me, naming those things that burdened my heart at that moment. On her way out, she turned to me and said, "Remember, Christ is risen." It was July. It reminded me of St. Seraphim's prophecy that they would sing "Christ is risen" in July. To this day, I can't say or hear "Christ is risen" without remembering Carol Ann. Eventually, the illness that was oppressing her mind took her life. She escaped from the hospital where she had been locked up and jumped off the Bloor Street Bridge. Holiness and deep human brokenness, this is the witness of the church at St. John's. Also, evangelization is not just a one-way effort. To evangelize, you must also be open to being evangelized by the poor.
Taken from the book Walking Humbly, The Holiness of the Poor by St. John the Compassionate Mission.
Thank you for listening to our Parables of Community, Asceticism of the Open Door. These parables are the precious pearls that God bestows on the church when it risks opening its door to the stranger. We hope that they will inspire you to discover the presence of the kingdom in your own parishes and life. This has been a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.
The ancient faith for the modern world. This is Ancient Faith Radio.
Welcome to Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls with your hosts, Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne Lowe, where we will connect our Orthodox faith to day-to-day living in relationship to our family, our work, and our view of ourselves. Father Nicholas is the priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, and Dr. Roxanne is a licensed clinical psychologist who uses her extensive training in private practice. Your questions are welcome by calling 855-237-2346. That's 855-237-2346. Here now is Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls. We are delighted that you're taking time to join us on this May 25th, Tuesday evening. My name is Father Nicholas Lowe. I'm the parish priest at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church right here in Jacksonville, Florida. This is actually a ministry of our church, and I'm joined by my lovely wife and co-host, Dr. Roxanne Lowe, who's a clinical psychologist. And you know by now that over the last several years, we've joined together with our Ancient Faith family to bring you a show that we hope helps to merge faith and psychology to tackle life's difficult challenges, to kind of give you some guidance in your own walk of faith. And we hope that this show is being helpful to you. So if you've ever wanted to talk to a priest or a psychologist or both, then we hope that Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls will be a show not only for you, but also for your friends and family. You can find out more about us and our ministry by going to our website at thelows.com. That's LOUHS.com. We also encourage you to join us on our social media platforms. We're on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, again, all under the headings of The Lows. And if you're one of these people like us that just love to receive daily words of encouragement and inspiration, several months back, Roxanne and I began writing these daily messages that we hope that would just lift people up all throughout the day. You know, there's so much doom and gloom, Roxanne, in the world, so much sadness that people experience on a day-to-day basis. And I know that we just wanted to kind of give people just some just words of encouragement to guide them through their day. And if you're one of these people that wants to receive a daily message from us, The Lows, we encourage you to go into our website at thelows.com. And on the front main website, there's a little tab that says subscribe. Click on that subscribe button, enter your email address, and then every single day you'll receive just a word of encouragement. We're so grateful. Thousands and thousands of people have already registered for it, which we never thought it would grow so quickly. But we're so excited about, all to God's glory. And we also encourage you to join us in our conversation tonight. This is one of those shows that tonight we're going to be talking about that I have no doubt every one of us are going to want to get engaged with. So we encourage you, don't be afraid or be bashful. We'd love to hear from you. You can call us tonight at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. You can also email us a question during the show at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. And I always encourage you that if you are sending us an email or you are calling in, if you don't want to use your name or just simply want to remain anonymous, please just let us know. We will definitely respect your decision. And finally, just some exciting news that we've been working on recently, just kind of know a little bit about what the Lows are up to. We are in the process of recording the Renewing You book audibly, so that you can actually get it and hear it in not another person's voice, but our voices. And we've been working just over the last several weeks, and hopefully by the fall, at the latest, by the early fall, you'll be able to receive the audible version of our book that we hope that not only will renew you, but also inspire you in your walk of faith. So be on the lookout for that. So today we're talking about a topic that I think so many of us, especially after this last year, Roxanne, are in need of, and that is, how do we choose joy? You know, so often as we journey through life, and I'm sure many of you, as you're listening to our show tonight, either you or someone you may know very well may just have come to you just in the last maybe day or two and just simply told you, you know, I just want to be happy, right, Roxanne? You just hear people say, I just want to enjoy my life. We actually have movies that are called The Pursuit of Happiness. Even in our Declaration of Independence, it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We all want to kind of experience this joy, this happiness. And so today we're going to be talking about that. And God knows over the last year, many of us have gone through so many trials with being quarantined, unable to visit with friends and family. Many of our listeners, I'm sure, have lost jobs. All of us have gone through at some point or another an emotional toll with the COVID pandemic, the racial unrest, the political division that we've seen over in our country over the last year. And really, I think all of us are just in need of a break. We just need to enjoy life. But what if I told you that there is a way to truly enjoy this life, but not in the way that the world tells us, in the way that God tells us? But in order for us to do that, friends, we have to kind of dispel some myths, and there's a lot of myths that are out there between joy and happiness. Joy and happiness. So let me kind of give you just some examples of the differences, the myths that oftentimes that come along with these two words of joy and happiness. So happiness is different than joy. We have to know that. It is totally different than joy. Happiness is based on external things happening. In other words, you are only happy when the things that are on the outside of you are going great. So if the sun is shining, or you're happy. When it's not raining and you're able to get to a location that you were hoping to get to, you're happy. When you get every single traffic light to be green, you're happy. When everything just kind of falls into place, you're happy. It's everything external chooses how you feel internally. But joy is different, friends. Joy is internal. It's internal. In other words, it's not based on the conditions or the circumstances that are going on. You have joy in the middle of your bad day.
Absolutely. It's the if-then situation that I always think of with happiness, and this sort of very temporary distractions and temptations that exist everywhere. We are in constant search of the need to feel something better than we currently feel. And yes, joy is a very, very different thing. Let's talk about joy for a moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things that we oftentimes try to tell people is, one of the greatest of the disciples or one of the greatest of the Apostle Paul speaks so much about joy. And, you hear about his life, and if many of you may just be new into Christianity, or if those of you that have been well into your Christian faith for years and years, in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, St. Paul lists all the things that he would go through. He talks about the 5 times he received the 39 lashes. He talks about being shipwrecked, snake bitten. He talks about all these things that he went through, all these struggles that he went through. And yet in all of that, he comes back to this beautiful statement that's found in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 to 18. Definitely go back and listen to this and get this Bible verse written in your notes. But 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 to 18. After all that he's been through, talk about having a bad day. He says this, therefore, we do not lose heart, though outwardly, the things that are happening on the outside, we are wasting away. So everything that's bad, the economy may be bad, my life may be difficult, my marriage may be difficult right now, the kids may be not making good choices. All these things externally. He says, yes, those things can happen, but then he says this, yet inwardly, there's a different dynamic going on. It says, we are being, I love this word, renewed day by day. See, that's our hope, is that you would choose that I'm not going to allow the outward situations dictate the inner joy that God has given me. And then he kind of ends it with this amazing statement. So we fix our eyes on not what is seen. In other words, I'm not going to fix my eyes based upon what is happening to me. I'm going to be focusing my attention on what's going on the inside of me, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. I love that. That's 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 to 18. So again, happiness, these are just common myths that we're just sharing with you. Happiness is based upon external things. Joy is based on internal decisions, internal choices. Here's number 3. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So let's talk about happiness and circumstance, right? Even the word happiness has that root word hap, right? Which is Latin for circumstance or luck. In other words, you're totally at the mercy of whatever's happening around you. In fact, the definition of the word circumstance is the circle you're standing in.
I think that's so important, Roxanne, because I know we mentioned this a couple of weeks back in a sermon that we gave, but it's so important to kind of highlight that hap is a Latin word for circumstance, and the word circumstance is the circle that you're standing in. In other words, it's where you are at that moment.
Yeah, it's the place that you decide to dwell. And what's really interesting about this is that heart is a very good fertilizer. Anything we plant, whether love, hate, fear, hope, revenge, jealousy, they all bear fruit. So it's up to us to decide really what we want to harvest. And even when we get upset, and sometimes, life can feel almost like a series of opportunities to get upset, to lose our joy. We can get upset about the trivial things. And sometimes we get upset about bigger things, trust that's been broken. But some days it is like a series of opportunities to get upset. But even when we get upset, we still have a choice of how long we want to stand in that circle. But what causes us to lose our joy? Think about that in your own life. That's a really important thing to identify if you're really thinking about happiness as circumstantial. For a lot of people, it's impatience. Even walking up to a line where the cashier was not really in any sort of hurry to get to the growing line that was happening. Impatience can rob us of our joy.
Exactly.
Mistakes that happen that affect us in some way, shape, or form, right? There's a trickle-down effect in our life. That robs us of our joy. When people offend us or we perceive negativity in somebody's mood that's around us, that robs us of our joy. When things don't go as we expect them to go, that robs us of our joy. And here's a big one. When we worry, when we get caught up in anxieties and stress about what's coming against us, what's about to seize our lives, that robs us of our joy. And it is important to note that 75% of people who struggle with anxiety also deal with depression. Why? Because anxiety robs us of our joy, the opportunity to be present. And
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what you're sharing, Roxanne, that's why you'll hear people sometimes when you ask them, how are you doing? They're saying, I guess I'm doing okay under the circumstance.
Under the circumstances. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we judge our circumstances, right? We over-idealize something from our past. We judge the present as worse than it is and the future as less positive than it may turn out. So we're always in a state of judgment. And maybe it's an injustice, right? The intentionality of malevolent behavior that exists in the world. We just think this quote unquote shouldn't happen, right? We get upset about injustices. That robs us of our joy. And another big one that I think we have to be really, really aware of is jealousy and comparing ourselves to others we deem to have it better in some way than ourselves. And yes, that robs us of our joy. So in knowing happiness is circumstantial, in seeking the foundation of joy, we have to be aware of all of the things that rob us, right, of that joy, because the Bible says that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly.
Right. I love that. And, building on some of the other, what we call joy jammers, what you shared so beautifully.
Joy
Roxanne,
jammers.
Is
like that.
Is also like sin and guilt.
Sin and guilt.
Right. I mean, these are things that, either it's a thing that we've made a mistake with, or it's a past that we're wishing that we hadn't done, or a struggle that we're trying to overcome and we feel guilty about. But they all become joy jammers. And also isolation. God knows that over the last year, many of us have felt we've been quarantined. We're still, although we're seeing more and more of opportunities for us to get out, we're still, in many ways, still feeling very, very isolated. I love how in the Old Testament, Nehemiah says, "It is the joy of the Lord that is our strength." We just can't isolate ourselves. In other words, it is the joy of the Lord that is our strength. In other words, we will never find any other area of lasting joy other than being basically with the Lord and leaning on Him. And, we can probably list, Roxanne, just tons and tons of different joy jammers. But one of the final ones that we would share is sometimes each other, like people, can become joy chambers, dealing with difficult people.
And one of the things that is another very, very important thing that just brought up that I remembered when dealing with other people, we have to know that we all have stories from our past, underlying sensitivities that rile us up and trigger us more than they should with other people because of some underlying framework that those people aren't even aware of. And so we have to be very reflective. We have to be very intentional about knowing ourselves when we're with others so that doesn't bleed into our relationships and our current struggles, that we don't overreact in situations where it wasn't warranted. And so in these moments of aggravation with others, it is a signal to pause and to choose to not only understand ourselves, but other people, other people.
Exactly. And, if you're just joining our show tonight, we're talking about a topic that I think so many of us need to hear. And that's one of the things that we'd like to do at Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls, is cover topics that, to be quite honest with you, that are things that everyday issues that all of us struggle with. And today we're talking about choosing joy over happiness. How do we choose true joy? And we've just been sharing with you, if you have been spending time with us, whether it be at retreats that we've spoken at or on through our sermons, one of the things that we always try to do is define the why. Like, why is this so important? Why is this impacting us so much? And then ultimately we get to the how. And so we're going to get to the how of how do we make joy much more permanent in our life as opposed to things that are just temporary. But we encourage you to join us tonight by calling in at 1-855-237-2346. Let's just talk about how do we choose joy? And so the number again is 1-855-237-2346. You can also email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. So again, happiness is based upon circumstance. Now listen to this. Joy is based on Christ. I think it's one of those things that we kind of want us all to remember is that joy, that throughout the scriptures, Christ is constantly telling us that true joy can only truly be found in Him. In fact, one of the great hallmarks of our Christian faith, especially post Pascha is that one of the hallmarks of what we should be like is being people filled with joy. I love in the Divine Liturgy, right before we go out for the great entrance, you may have noticed your priest doing what they call one of the great sensings, and they sense the icon screen, the altar table, and a couple of other areas within the altar. But he is reading a beautiful prayer, and it says, and one of the lines in that prayer says this: "For through the cross," listen to this now, friends, "joy came to this world." And you could see almost that exact Bible verse found in the book of Hebrews. But through the cross, which everyone would say, what are you talking about? The cross was so negative, so awful, so evil. But yet it was through that joy came into this world, so that God doesn't see the crosses in our life, but he always sees the tombs in our life. And he sees the resurrection. And so that's an encouragement for all of us.
Well, we're going to take a call that looks like it's just came in. Caller, are you there?
Hello?
Hello. Welcome to Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls.
Hi. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
Oh, no problem. So were we when we got on here in the beginning.
Right, absolutely.
I guess my question is, I am kind of new to Orthodoxy. I had grown up in a Baptist church, and recently through life, I'm a single parent, and I ended up, after having the kids, going through school, becoming a healthcare worker, working with special needs. But after working so much and so hard, I ended up getting burnout really quickly. And I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and then recently diagnosed with BPD. And my question was more along the lines of, I've taken some cognitive behavioral therapy and DBT2, and they really focus on one of the things that I thought was helping before was meditation. But I realized the type of meditation that I started gravitating towards was not the type of meditation I should have been gravitating towards. And I don't have a spiritual leader or anything like that. I live in a really rural community where there is one parish that luckily just before the pandemic I was able to visit once. I'm in Ontario and we're still under a strict lockdown right now. So I was just wondering if there was any basically books that you would recommend or anything that would deal with the type of issues and things that I am working through, but in like the Christian stance.
That's an excellent question. And if you email us directly after the show, we can put in some resources that we have actually book-wise for that. And when you think about meditation, I mean, listen, the power of the flesh and the spirit aligning is the goal of what Christian meditation would look like. It is a realignment of yourself, to know yourself and to pay attention to yourself and to be mindfully aware of yourself in relationship to Christ. So it is a coming back within so that you can connect with Him. Okay, so this is sort of where I would encourage you if you're looking at how to kind of be mindful. And by the way, anxiety really requires this because anxiety lives both in the head and in the mind and cognitively, but it also lives in the body. And if you don't do anything to address what's happening in the body physiologically, it's very hard to calm the system, the nervous system. And so we're called to pay attention. The church fathers talk so much about discernment and about going within and that level of reflection to discern how I'm doing in relationship to who Christ has called me to be and to calm my physical spirit. And Christ goes off all the time to lonely places, to solitary places, to hear the voice of his Father and to move away from the busyness of the world. So,
sorry, that's part of my increasing anxiety. Before, like, I just learned about Orthodoxy before, like, just as the pandemic was coming up, and I'm coming from a very Baptist family, whereas I was able to go to a Catholic high school, but that was after I promised not to meet a Catholic boy and convert. Because I think the saints and, like, my family has been happy that I've been going towards God, but they're not happy with the route I'm taking. But I'm hoping that they can see my calmness and the way it's changed me so far and see that as a positive thing and slowly come to terms, because I can't change that. That's only something they can change, and that's something I've been working on, and I understand. I guess I find it really hard because there's not really anyone I can talk to about this. Even the church that is here, there is no pastor, there's no priest, and they were doing services once a month before the pandemic. So,
yeah, that's one of those things, I just, as we're kind of, just reflecting on what you're sharing, I would encourage you that, first of all, God bless you. You're a single mom. You're doing all of these things. You found a new faith that is, I'm sure you're growing in and you're learning a lot about, and that's beautiful. And sometimes it's great to just kind of be, as the Bible says, be still and know that I'm God, that God is not done with you, that God is working in you and through you. And although there may be some challenges, again, that's what we're talking about today. There are some external challenges that you're going through. One of the hallmarks of Orthodox Easter is that there is an internal joy, an internal joy that you decide to have, that no matter what may come against you, or what may not be available, or what may not be easily as easy as in other areas of the country, that you still remain joyful in Christ, that you continue to grow in your faith, continue to grow in your walk of faith. And thank God for the beauty of technology and ministries like Ancient Faith that allow you to be connected and to stay connected.
This was actually the first resource that I had received, and I can tell you it's definitely my favorite one.
Well, I am so happy for you, and we will be praying with you. Email us right after the show. We will definitely provide you those books. But thanks so much for calling, and we love having you you engage, and we encourage also to the rest of you that are tuning in and listening, just like this caller did. Just ask any kind of question. You could remain anonymous if you choose to be, but we just love having people engaged in the conversation. So you can call in at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. Again, thanks to the caller for calling in. So as we continue this conversation, I wanted to share with you a quote that may kind of just help you as we're talking about these common myths that we have between joy and happiness. So as we mentioned earlier, a major myth is that happiness is simply just is attainable. But what we've learned is that happiness is really based upon circumstances, external things, whereas joy is internal, based on Christ. Listen to this quote. It says, "Joy can be defined as a very positive confidence that we can possess by knowing and trusting God regardless of our circumstances." Let me say that again. Joy can be defined as a very positive confidence that we can be sure about by knowing and trusting God regardless of our circumstances. I just think it's just a beautiful thing that no matter what happens, that circumstances, yes, are going to happen, but it does not have to take away the joy that God gives me, especially what he gave me with and in Pascha. It's based on Christ. And the final myth that we want to share before we kind of go into just some areas that you too can apply today in your own walk of faith to create a level of joy, inner joy, is this: happiness happens by chance. Joy happens by choice. Happiness happens by chance. In other words, it's never up to you. It just kind of happens. If it's a good day, great. If it's not, then it's totally you basically are choosing happiness to be something totally out of your control, that if it just so feels so like it'll make you happy. It's based upon chance. But joy, that's different. It's based upon choice. I don't have to let this person steal my joy. I don't have to allow this thing that seems out of my control to be out of my control, because God has it in control. And for too many of us, we have to remember that joy is a choice that we make.
And it's amazing, but the foundation of joy being that choice lies in knowing the voice of God that we hear through the Bible. Through both the Old and New Testament, the more you read, the more you observe, the more you spend time with his word, the more you can absorb what that really looks like in real time to keep your joy.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you the framework for how to interpret all of these situations, because cover to cover in the Bible, those folks have experienced it all. Mm-hmm. There are stories of impatience. There are stories of suffering. There's stories of offense, of betrayal, of broken relationships, and worry and angst and jealousy. So any of these things you're struggling with, it gives you this sort of strong foundation to really allow joy to be that choice that you experience in real time.
So let me just kind of give you guys all just some theological truths about joy. And if you have a pen and paper, you may want to write some of these down, but they're just some basic, we can spend all night talking about just theological truths in general, but let me just give you just some on the point of joy. And so number one is this, that joy comes from knowing that God has a plan for my life. Now listen, friends, and I tell this to people all the time at retreats as well as in our church services and in homilies. If you don't know why you are on this earth, the devil will show you his way on this earth. In other words, very simply, if you don't know how God made you, why God made you, and what he has for you to do, then everything else in this life will define it. That God has a purpose and a plan for your life. And I love in the book of Ephesians, it talks about this. It talks about the fact that we are God's workmanship, created, listen to this, to do work for Christ. In other words, he has a plan for our life. And some of you may say, well, Father, I just don't know what my plan is. Well, so often it's because you're allowing the circumstantial things that are going on around you to kind of clog up your mind in knowing what God has for you.
Absolutely. And listen, God wants to use us and can use us no matter how little we feel our gift is. Mm-hmm. He has planted something on the inside of each of us. I mean, think about the story of the loaves and the fish when there weren't enough to feed the people. You know, Christ could have said, okay, I'm going to make the extra bread and the fish and I'm going to distribute it. But he didn't. He said, you disciples, go check and see what you have. Now you go and feed the people. Mm-hmm. And he assigned them the job. Mm-hmm. Even though he could have done it himself. Right? He's always looking to use us, no matter how little we think our worth or value is in this world. He has a better plan for us.
I love
a bigger plan.
Right. I love how King David in the Book of Psalms puts it. And listen to how he speaks about this, okay, friends? He says, Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You make my lot secure. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance. I will praise you, Lord, who counsels me. Even at night, my heart instructs me. I will keep my eyes always on you. With him at my right hand, I cannot be shaken. I love that. No matter what's going on, I'm not going to be shaken. Therefore, my heart, listen to this word, is filled with joy, and my tongue rejoices. My body also will rest secure, because, Lord, you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead, nor will you let your faithful one see decay. You make known to me the path of life. You will fill me, listen, with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. That's from the book of Psalms, chapter 16, verse 5 to 11. I love that. Like, God's love doesn't have boundary lines. God's joy is not based upon circumstance. It's based upon us having him close to our life. And so I think it's just important. So that's just one truth. That joy comes from knowing that God has a plan for my life. Here's another one. That joy comes when you are certain that God will work it out.
There's the trust.
Yes, exactly. That God will work it out. So not only does he have a plan, but even when the plan of my life gets interrupted, God is still at work in ways that we don't even see him working, and is going to work it out. So God is at work. I think about, our dads. Many of you have heard this story, and if you've purchased our book, you know that you've heard this story in the book. But we went through a very difficult time where our fathers were diagnosed with cancer the exact same week. And prior to that, they were the picture of perfect health. I mean, they didn't have any major medical problems. And our life turned upside down. Yes, the plan of our life was great. I was already working in church. I had just come back from a mission trip. So on the surface, the plan was in place. I was doing what God yearned for me to do. And then when ultimately, when they both are diagnosed with cancer, we go through this tremendous struggle. As those of you that have had a family member or a friend that's gone through cancer treatment, you know that they're through chemo and radiation, how difficult and how that is not only on the person who's struggling with cancer, but also on the family that's with them. But at the end, our dads would go to be with the Lord and would pass away. But there was a level of joy that we knew and that our dads knew where they were going. That because of Easter, because of Pascha, death does not end. It's simply a comma towards something greater. And when you're in a relationship with Christ and the church, yes, those things may not always work out the way our earthly mind may think that it would work out. But when we have faith in Christ, we come to the resolution, especially in this season of Pascha, that it all works out. Like we are in a win-win situation as Christians. Because as the book of Philippians says, if we die, it's to be with Christ. And if we live, we can remain here to continue to do God's work. But we are in a win-win situation because of what Christ did in the tomb. And so I just encourage you to listen to what Peter says. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 8. This is a great Bible verse. We call it like a refrigerator verse because I would encourage you to write it down and put it on a refrigerator or somewhere close to you that you can see it every day. But listen to what it says. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 8. Though you have not seen him, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy. Love that. Friends, that's what we're working towards. That maybe we've never truly seen Christ, but we've experienced him. And because of that, we have an inexpressible, inexhaustible joy that God gives us. You're listening to Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls. We are talking about tonight choosing joy over happiness. Choosing joy over happiness. We invite you to call us tonight. You can call in at 1-855-237-2346. 1-855-237-2346. If you're struggling right now, going through a very difficult time, maybe struggling with just trying to find joy, everything around you seems so dark, give us a call. You can remain anonymous if you choose to be. We'd love to just help you out. We also encourage you to email us a question at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com.
So, this was such an important point about trust because I think a lot of times we give over our situations to God, but then we very much coach from the sidelines on how it should go. And if it's not working according to plan, so many of us start to mistrust God, start to feel, oh, he is far away. And what we don't always realize is that he is working things in us, through us, for us, that we cannot see. We don't see that plan. But when we have our trust, when we believe wholeheartedly with our full spirit, we see how that works itself out. We see the growth he was looking to do within us.
Exactly. And I think that's a great, Roxanne, segue to the third theological truth that we've been talking about. And right after this, we're going to take a little break and then give you just some excellent practical steps that you can do to choose joy. But really, the third theological truth is joy comes when you choose it. Joy is not going to come after you. You have to go after joy. You have to go and find it. And you have to be one that's willing to kind of go out of everything that you've always been taught or everything that you've often been learned over time, that you're going to wait for something to happen, that it's not about an if or then, but that you are going to simply choose it. Listen to how St. Paul in the book of the Philippians, how he speaks to just about the extraordinary way of how to remain filled with joy. Keep in mind that the book of Philippians is written while Paul is in prison, chained to a prison door, not seeing any kind of light, not knowing at any moment when he is going to experience death. So it's part of what we call the prison epistles that are found in the Bible. But listen to what he says. Philippians 4, chapter 4, verses 4. He says this. Listen to these 5 words. Rejoice in the Lord always. I love that. Rejoice in the Lord always. And then as if to remind the people while he's in prison.
We don't get it.
I mean, he would have every reason, Roxanne, to think to himself or to say, my gosh, my life is so miserable. I'm chained here. I don't know if I'm going to die at any moment. I mean, imagine thinking that at any moment you will lose your life. You will be killed. And then he's simply saying those 5 words, rejoice in the Lord always. And then he continues the verse by saying, I will say it again, rejoice. I just love that. And so all of us are going to have some bad days in our life. And maybe you're in a bad day right now. But I want to give you, at the other side of this break, we're going to give you several ways that you can truly choose joy. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls with Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne Lowe will be back in a moment. Give them a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855-237-AF-RADIO. They would love to hear from you.
Are you struggling in your walk with Christ? Do you want to rediscover your reason for living, the person you were created to be? Renewing You, a priest, a psychologist, and a plan gives you the keys to unlock areas of your life that hold you back from fully experiencing the renewal and transformation God has in mind for you. Co-authored by a priest and a psychologist, Father Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne Lowe, Renewing You combines principles of spiritual growth with psychological tools to help you become your best self, fully connected with God's purpose for you. To purchase this book, please go to store.ancientfaith.com. That's store.ancientfaith.com.
We're back with Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls and Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne Lowe. Do you have a question for the Lowes? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855-237-AF-RADIO. Here once again is Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne Lowe.
Well, thank you again for joining us on this Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls show. This is May 25th, 2021. We're so grateful that you're joining us tonight. We have been talking about choosing joy over happiness and the differences between the two, the many common myths that we have about choosing joy and what is happiness. But before we get to the really some practical principles that you can apply today in applying joy in your life despite what's going on around you, we do want to just remind you about some exciting things that are coming up for all of you. We are in the process right now of recording our book, Renewing You, audibly, and so it should be out. Actually, Roxanne and I are doing this ourselves, and so we wanted to have our voices to be the voices that are reading to you. And so we hope that you will share once this comes out in a couple of months about the book, especially if you've enjoyed it. And if you haven't received or purchased this book, as a reminder, all of the proceeds from this book go to outreach ministries. We just feel that God has put on our heart to make a difference in this world. And that's what we're using all the proceeds of this book to go towards. So just so you know, you can find it here at store.ancientfaith.com. And we also invite you to join us tonight to call in. We'd love to hear your comments as we've had some earlier calls. You can call in at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-237-2346. And we also encourage you to email us at ask@ancientfaith.com. That's ask@ancientfaith.com. So we're going to go. We actually have a call that just came in. So caller, are you there?
Yes.
Well, welcome to Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls. We're grateful that you're joining with us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I wanted to say thank you for Renewing You, because I have the book on my Kindle now, and I got to a part at the very beginning that when I read it, I had to do a double take when I read the sentence, because even though I knew what the words were in my mind, I had to do a double take with it, because I had to realize, I don't have to think that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to thank you and Dr. Roxanne for the book, because even though I haven't really been able to read it yet, take the time to read it, I have gone all the way through it and written down all the scripture to be able to read the scripture as I go through and have the scripture on, save the scripture for later.
Sure.
And my question is, how do you hang on to the joy once you get it? Because it's real easy for me to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
If I could just say simply that every day is an opportunity to reset and find it, because it does not. The state of feeling joy is a foundation in the way that we think. But because we are a fallen world, because we are human beings, we struggle with our thinking. We struggle with temptations. We fall outside the circle at times. And every day, every moment is the opportunity to notice that we've done that. We've fallen away from how God is asking us to think, and we choose to bring ourselves back in. So there's no magic wand to the how do we do it once so that it stays.
Right.
It is a constant in being born into the new and reminding ourselves that we're all still learning how to do that well, and we have to do it daily.
Right. It's almost like, it's almost like you're almost, as you were sharing earlier, it's like we have the daily prayer of the Lord's Prayer. It's a daily choice that I have to make. It's a daily choice of choosing joy.
Moment to moment even.
Absolutely. And because everything in our world, everything in our world will tell us that will try its best to steal the joy. I mean, that one of the definitions of the devil is the joy stealer. He's doing that. So, but I want you to, I would love for you, the whole last part of the show are going to be giving you some practical steps to apply. How do you choose daily joy? So definitely stay with us on the show and get out maybe a pen and paper, because those will definitely be some things that you can write down for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for calling in.
Thank you.
Take care. So, as our caller, I'm so grateful that she called in, and again, we invite all of you, if you're interested, to call in. We'd love to hear from you, and ask questions just like our caller was, or just basically, how do we make sure that we do it? How do we do it once and for all? And what we've found out, obviously, is that you can't do it once and for all. It's a daily choice that we're making. But let me give you some practical principles that you can apply. Number one is always remember this: choose to look beyond what has happened. Let me say that one more time. Choose to look beyond what has happened. Whether it has been an event that just happened today or an event that happened years ago. For too many people, we are wallowing in what happened. I oftentimes tell people that, because we can oftentimes go around and say, why did this happen to me? And why did this person do this to me? And why is this happening in this way? Why did I lose my job? And if we're not careful, friends, we can die in our whys. We can die in our whys. And so the key is always asking yourself, okay, I've got to look beyond what has happened. And one of the, Roxanne, you could probably speak more on this, but psychologists have spoken about that. One of the leading causes of depression and sadly suicide is people taking their bad days and are like, well, I just need to think about this over and over again and wallowing in it, just constantly ruminating it. The word ruminating means literally just kind of just over and over. I just keep rehearsing it and restating it. No, you don't need to keep looking at what happened. Why? Because what happened. And it's beyond, and now we have to be at a point, okay, I can't change that, but I can change my decision about how I'm going to react to it.
Absolutely.
You can't change what had happened, but you can change how you choose to live your life by it and from it.
Yeah, and how it's potentially changing me. Sometimes God allows those trials in our life to do what? To change us.
Right, and sometimes the devil will use those to change us as well. So you'll see people that are just depressed, they're negative, they're always finding they've kind of allowed that whole misery loves company kind of mental approach.
Absolutely.
Because they've allowed the joy robber himself, the devil, the enemy, to constantly steal them, to constantly remind them over and over again of what didn't happen good today. Why didn't this person treat me right? What happened 10 years ago? And continue to wallow in it.
Absolutely. So if joy is the foundation, and we're choosing to look beyond what has happened, number two, figure out the source. The best way to keep your joy is to notice when it leaves and study why it left.
Mm-hmm.
Not to stay in that, to marinate in it, to overthink in it, but to come out of it, to be able to look beyond what has happened. We have to put words on it, right? I spoke with someone really just the other day that didn't realize how much his overthinking and his narrative of self-doubt was intruding upon his ability to feel joy. He was a strong person of faith, but couldn't understand why he never felt happy. He was in a constant state of overthinking and doubting himself, and he wasn't really tuning into that because that didn't really feel like a comfortable place to be. But when he did, when he studied why it left, he was able to look beyond it. So figure out the source, tune in enough to move on. Number 3, don't judge it. A lot of people, when they start to tune into what causes them to lose their joy, they hear oh, I shouldn't feel so annoyed at such a little thing. They start to judge themselves for feeling, oh, I shouldn't be grieving. Oh, I should be over this by now. No, look at it. Be open to it, because with transparency and with God being brought into that situation, you may be learning something and growing in a way that he's wanted you to grow.
And I love, Roxanne, just kind of building on what you were saying. Listen to how St. Paul, Roxanne, in the Book of Philippians, chapter 1, verses 12. This is an amazing Bible verse, friends. And again, Paul is writing to the people of Philippi. There's only 4 chapters in this entire book. He is chained in a prison awaiting his execution. Listen to what he says, though. Listen to his perspective on life and how he chooses joy despite the circumstances. He's looking beyond what has happened. He says this: "Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, what has happened to me." So look at this. He acknowledges that bad things are happening to him. And then he says this: "But what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel." Isn't that amazing? Like, for some of us, we're going, what are you talking about? Like, how could someone have such a positive attitude? But even in the midst of his dark day, his bad day, all these things coming against him in the circle that he's standing in right now, he's simply saying, but look at what happened. And if you read the book of Philippians, you know that there were many people that came to know Christ by watching Paul in prison. People that were just moved by his joy, his inner joy. So what he was saying is that, yes, you will have bad days. Let's not live in a kind of utopias world or a kumbaya world where we think that we're not going to have bad days. We will. And God tells us that even in the Gospel of John, that you're going to have bad days. But listen to how he says, but God does something with it. So when we say to choose to look beyond what has happened, it's recognizing that if I'm not careful, I can get into the quicksand of the why is this happening to me, as opposed to, okay, God, what are you going to use this for?
Exactly.
What are you going to use this for? So said very simply, stop asking why and start focusing on what.
I love that. Stop asking why and start focusing on what.
Right.
And a lot of that takes some self-reflection. So
Absolutely.
Again, connecting within so that you can connect with him. Who are we in relation to Christ?
And Roxanne, I was thinking, even just going back to what we were talking earlier about it in our own lives, just how this has worked out is, when I had gone on a mission trip, just a couple of weeks prior to my father and Roxanne's dad being diagnosed with cancer, I had some of the most transformative faith experiences that ever, and they're mentioned obviously in the book, but we were on fire for Christ. It was just a beautiful time. And then literally within that Sunday at church, I saw my dad not looking well, I hadn't seen him in a couple of weeks because I was in Africa, not doing well, and I was very much worried about him. And the following days when he had this massive seizure, which we would find out which was cancer, caused by cancer. But the point being is that here, we went through this situation where all these good things were happening, and then something happened, something negative happened. And I remember in the hospital room, getting a phone call and the doctor saying that, your dad may not even pull through this night because of the seizure. And me saying, God, why? So I just want to be transparent with you as well as listeners and friends of Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls, that sometimes even the priest, even the psychologist can say, why? Why is this happening? But looking back on it now, when we look beyond what happened, is that we realize that, yes, our fathers, by God's grace, are in the kingdom of heaven because God promises that for us, but also recognizing the beauty of knowing that as a priest, I'm so much better able to minister to my flock who are going through cancer, who have family members that are going through cancer, who are going through difficult times, because I walked that journey. Even times in which my flock may ask themselves, God, why? Or Father Nick, why is God punishing me? And being able to kind of respond to that in a positive way. So again, we choose to look beyond what has happened. We stop asking why and start asking what.
And number 3, be intentional about what's winning. In these moments. We have to choose. What do we want to win? Do we want selfish ambition to lead? Do we want pride? Do we want ego? Do we want our position to be so ingrained that we lose our relationship? Or do we want our purpose to win, our gratitude to win, our love, our compassion, and our benevolence? These are the moments when we choose not to lose our joy because of what's winning. And life is a treasure we don't want to lose sight of. It passes us by so quickly. And we don't want to let it be hijacked by this prolonged angst or the temptation to follow these sort of unvirtuous ways of living. So the next time you get upset at the small stress that life's bringing or the moment of conflict with someone, take a deep breath and redirect your soul. What do I want to win? And remember gratitude. There is still goodness that exists even amidst that situation, even amidst that person. And your peace is only yours to give away. We have to have that gratitude, that level of gratitude for who people are, even when they mess up. We have to remember our purpose, that it is so easy to be distracted by temporary pleasures. And when we forget what our deeper purpose is, and that is to keep building our lives constantly, resetting around, building our lives around the cornerstone of our life, who is Christ, seeking in real time to live in ways that reset us back to his image.
Right. I
so
love that.
Filter everything through the lens of, what do you want to win? What do you want to win? Number 4, I'd say navigate the negativity. This is probably one of the strongest areas of impact that the enemy makes in our lives. When there is negativity around us, we fall prey to it, we fall into it, and we lose the presence that is the fullness of joy. We forget the right hand and the pleasures forevermore, as we read in Psalm. So if we're not careful, being around someone else's negativity can wear on us. The tension they bring to a situation can cloud the atmosphere with heaviness. We find ourselves all of a sudden feeling unsettled, defensive, worried. All the joy has left our soul. But that doesn't have to plague our day. We have to just be careful to not allow ourselves to get caught up in the spiral that has seized someone else. We can't personalize their reactions. It's not healthy. And usually it only makes our situation worse. We can't also put undue pressure on ourselves to control it or to let our ego get in the way and react offensively to it. Neither outcome is helpful. So if negativity seizes someone, don't add it. Don't add to it. Write it on your heart to do the next right thing. Be compassionate, be intentional, be conscious of your thoughts, filter out the negativity that starts to build and starts to emerge. And in conversations, take in only what's necessary with them for the sake of the moment and leave everything behind that's simmering with negativity.
Exactly.
Because that can rob you of your joy. And last thing is number 5, and probably one of the most important, is be present in your life. Life is short. We can't say that enough. One moment we're here, and the next we are a memory for someone else. We know this, but we don't always live what we know. And it is so easy to move at a pace of life that doesn't allow us to fully experience life abundantly. We worry, we juggle, we stress, we start again. We do it again every day. And all the while we are missing so many important moments in our life. And it's often not until something life-changing happens that this message is imprinted on our heart in ways we wish it hadn't. And then we start to live, right? But don't wait for that. Don't wait for that life-altering experience to change you. Contain whatever it is that is intruding upon the joy that God intended for you. Let the irritation go. Put your work away. Let go of trying to change something only God can change. And make time for yourself and the people that you love. Rest and remember that your work can wait, but smiles, laughter, and connection cannot.
I love that, Roxanne. You know, as we're closing, we just want to leave you with this final thought, and that is to always make sure that you choose to focus on what really matters. if someone was to ask you if you only had 30 days to live, what would you focus in on? If you only had a few moments left on this earth, what would it be? Unfortunately, and I've been at many times at people's sides when there are only a few moments left on this earth, and they're not talking about who offended them or what they wish would have happened or a circumstance. They're very real, and I think that so many times for us we can kind of buy into this lie of what life is. But Christ speaks about this real life over and over again, a real life that he speaks about that's connected to him and that chooses joy. And so our encouragement for all of you is to always focus on what really matters. And what does really matter? You're getting close to Christ, your family, and your purpose. And all the other things that kind of come around you that try to steal your joy, that are just joy jammers. Remember these three words. Forget about it. Forget about it. In other words, just simply let it go. I love in the book of the Psalm 50, it says this amazing statement. We actually say this in the Divine Liturgy, one of the prayers that the priest says, and it's just an amazing statement. It says, restore to me, Lord, restore to me the joy of your salvation. In other words, every single day, just restore to me the joy that you have, that you've given us on that holy Saturday and early Sunday morning when you gave us the empty tomb that you rose from the dead. So God bless you all. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. We want to thank Matushka Trudy for doing the great job that she's doing producing this show. We also want to thank all of the great people at Ancient Faith. We love working with you guys. We also encourage you to subscribe to our daily inspirational messages. You can go find them at thelows.com, clicking on that subscribe button. And mark your calendars. June 8th, we're going to have a show dedicated to the opioid crisis, a show you don't want to miss. Have a great night, everyone, and stay strong in your walk of faith.